The earth had always existed, but was nothing but water, until Lord Dharma came to be. He raged the winds until land was created. On this land, he put the first two people, Pusang Sa and Yasang Si. These people molded people and animals from clay, and gave each creature their own purpose. Pu and Ya are known as the grandparents of the world, as they created all living things. Early man migrated and settled in Southeast Asia, eventually becoming the Haubinian culture. Although these people were more centralized in Vietnam, many important Haubinian digging sites are found throughout Thailand. One of these sites found in northeast Thailand found evidence that these people began the domestication and cultivation of various nuts, beans, and gourds as an early source of food. But as we understand it, once the Haubinian culture began to fade, the domestication of rice and pigs began in Thailand. The region entered its Bronze Age, probably from the introduction of metal from southern Chinese people. This is thought to be the beginning of hierarchical systems in Thailand. As the people of Thailand began to understand the use and fabrication of iron, their geographical position became highly important as they profited from being sandwiched between the Vietnamese, Chinese, and Indian people, which allowed for access to a variety of luxury items. And now, several sites began to appear surrounded by moats. But the nature of these towns are not entirely understood by historians. One theory is that they were created as a way to help drainage, as the region sees an annual harsh rainy season. The region was constantly under the influence of many large nations around them, primarily the Indian kingdoms, who introduced Buddhism to Thailand. Very soon, Central and South Thailand were conquered and enveloped into the sphere of influence of the Cambodian Funan Empire, which brought significant wealth to the land. The kingdom enjoyed a long period of prosperity and trade power over the sea, but this faded as the Srivijaya Empire began to rise to prominence in Indonesia. Their naval power and control over the Malacca Strait strangled the Funan economically. Slowly, this caused the downfall and collapse of the Funan, which allowed for many small states to become independent, while some eastern parts of Thailand fell under the rule of the Cambodian Chenla Kingdom. These small independent states are known as Dvaravati, as they shared a culture, but were not as united as future Dvaravati became. This somewhat united Dvaravati state was not a kingdom or a modern nation as we know it. Rather, it used the mandala political model. This meant that the land was full of a collection of city-states and chiefdoms who held allegiance to a center of power, similar to a federation. This center for the Dvaravati was the city Nakhon Pathom. The small states were meant to send a tribute to the capital every period of time. This political structure held great significance to inter-ruler relationships, and so these tributes were often responded to with gifts from the center of power. For sake of brevity and pronunciation, I'll be calling these mandalas kingdoms or polities for the rest of the video. The Dvaravati kingdom extended their influence westward, only stopped by the mountain range, and south onto the Malay Peninsula. All the while from the south, the Srivijaya conquered southern Thailand on the Malay Peninsula. While there, they built quite an important trade port along the eastern coast, vital in retaining Srivijayan power in the Gulf of Thailand. As time went on, many of the small states of the Dvaravati changed allegiances to the Khmer to the east, which forced the rest of the kingdom to split in two. The new mandalas are known as Lavo along the Gulf of Thailand and Haripunchai located in North Thailand. Now, there was a flow of immigrants into the region, coming from China, of people who were constantly fighting for independence but were never successful. Due to these insurgencies, the people were killed en masse by the Chinese, forcing them to flee. These people are known as the Thai, and they settled all throughout Southeast Asia, but particularly in the modern borders of Thailand. Here they became heavily influenced by local cultures, creating a new distinct culture, while remaining strong in traditions. The Lavo polity was very scarce with their written information, so sadly not much is known. What is known is that eventually the Lavo were under Khmer rule. This came from a marriage between rulers who agreed to unite their states. Despite being seen as scum by the Khmer, the Thai people became increasingly powerful and numerous due to limited power the Khmer held beyond the lands with a majority native Khmer population. This growing power led to several small Thai city-states appearing, although these were still considered under Khmer rule. Eventually, due to internal pressures and a lack of cultural hegemony, the Khmer released Lavo as a vassal, although the polity was now known as Lop Buri due to Thai linguistic influence. This vassalship wasn't enough for the Thai people, who strove for complete independence. So, there was civil unrest led by Thai rebels. Soon, an invasion led by the pagan empire invaded Lop Buri from the west, from what is now Myanmar. This attack was repelled entirely by Thai forces. But soon, the animist beliefs of the Thai people would be slowly crushed with the enforced religious practices of Hinduism and Buddhism by the Khmer. As the nation saw the military victory just attained, and worried that the Lapburu were becoming too self-sufficient, and so invaded to create more hegemony between the two kingdoms. An independent Thai state became increasingly popular, so two men, Bang Klang Hao and Phao Muang, led a rebellion against their governor in the province of Sukhothai, beginning the Sukhothai kingdom. The kingdom saw rapid expansion due to mass public support, as this was the first true Thai nation the region had seen with no outside influence. The kingdom came to control all Lopburi lands, which was most of Thailand, with the exception of some fringe eastern territories still under direct Khmer rule. Around this time, the Lan Na kingdom, another Thai nation, had been gaining prominence in northern Thailand, rivaling the Haripunchai, which had been in a long period of peace and prosperity. The prosperity part was important, as Haripunchai was a fairly rich nation, which attracted the attention of the Lan Na, and so the Lan Na began their expansion into the Dvaravati kingdom. In the end, the entire state was engulfed into the Lan Na kingdom. The Sukhothai lost power as small states broke away, and some lands were conquered by the Lan Na. One of these breakaway states was the powerful Ayutthaya, based around the northern part of the Gulf of Thailand. This fledgling kingdom came to conquer many of these independent states, and made Sukhothai its tributary, eventually annexing it too. Hoping to gain an ally to the north in Lan Na, the ruler of Ayutthaya, Bodhamanchara II, aided a rebellion of a claimant to the Lan Na throne, who would be an Ayutthaya puppet. The rebellion was suppressed, and the army sent as aid was defeated, and now, Lan Na understandably disliked the Ayutthaya. This rivalry escalated into a full war when an Ayutthaya province broke away to join Lan Na. There was a back and forth between the nations for a long time, before the war ended with minimal territorial changes. But the real damage was done internally. As Ayutthaya was a large nation, they could handle the manpower and material requirements needed for a costly war. But Lan Na was not so fortunate. This war left permanent scars on the kingdom. During the Lan Na conflict, the Ayutthaya were looking to expand southwards to have some influence in the lucrative trade found in the Strait of Malacca. So, Ayutthaya attacked the Sultanate of Malacca. But due to heavy influence by the Chinese, they were unsuccessful in their goal. But soon, Europeans began making their way by sea to Southeast Asia, and as the Portuguese conquered the Malacca Sultanate, they sent an envoy to begin relations. This began a highly profitable trade relationship that allowed for the kingdom of Ayutthaya to flourish with local literature, medicine, and art. All of these having a golden age at this time in Thailand. The Ayutthaya saw a threat to the west in the expansionist Taungoo dynasty, and so fortified a town that the dynasty claimed. This was in vain as the garrison there was defeated, which marked the beginning of the First Myanmar-Siamese War. The Ayutthaya expected this to be the end of hostilities, and so were unprepared as the Taungoo invaded further. The Thai army took so long to mobilize that the Taungoo made it all the way to the capital city, Ayutthaya. This is where the Thai attacked the Taungoo in open battle before fleeing to the safety of the city walls, as the Thai were severely outmanned. But the Thai had many advantages of being in Ayutthaya. There was an annual rainy season that would flood any Taungoo camps around the city, forcing the siege to be on a time limit of a few months. With the Taungoo ruler being on campaign, many revolts began to arise in the Myanmarese homeland of previously subdued people. The only cannons able to be brought on campaign were unable to penetrate the walls of the city as they were so small. The city was naturally moated by rivers, which made assaults nearly impossible. Eventually, the Taungoo gave up, after their only chance at success, bribery, failed, and as the Taungoo retreated, the Ayutthaya constantly harassed them. The Thai now began to rebuild from the invasion. But they knew that this wasn't the last time that they would see the Taungoo invade, and prepared for another attack, with a standing army and supplies at the ready. The suspicions were correct, as after Lan Na was attacked by the dynasty, the Taungoo invaded, initially focusing on vassals, who almost all gave in without a fight, then turning their attention to the capital. Lan Na, influenced by the Ayutthaya, began to revolt, hoping that the distracted Taungoo wouldn't be able to subdue them. But these hopes were in vain as the rebels were crushed. Now, once again, the enemy was unable to breach the walls of Ayutthaya, but the devastation felt by the nation forced a peace treaty that seceded lands and forced the Ayutthaya to be a vassal of the Taungoo. But not discouraged by their defeat, the Ayutthaya bided their time, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. This came when the Ava revolted, and the Thai took advantage of the distracted rulers to declare independence. An army was sent to subdue them, But all previous attacks into Thailand were prefaced with sufficient planning. This was a hastily put together army with vague plans, attacking during monsoon season, so the rebel army easily defeated them. This became a pattern of an underprepared army invading, and the Thai having an easy time destroying and routing the Taungoo forces. The final Taungoo attempt at reclaiming the nation made it very close to the capital city, and here, a very famous battle took place. The heir to the Taungooian throne, Ming Yi Swa, and the leader of Ayutthaya, Nariswaran, fought each other on their war elephants. Nariswaran managed to kill Ming Yi, which caused the Taungoo army to retreat, securing Ayutthayan independence. But Nariswaran wanted revenge for the years of subjugation and war, and planned his invasion of the weakened Taungoo. They conquered the southern coastal region before marching north. As major instability ravaged Taungoo, the Thai invasion made it all the way to the capital city, only to abandon the siege in fear of a larger army, ending the war with few changes. Now, Ayutthaya expanded its influence across Southeast Asia, gaining vassals. But this was short-lived as rebellions and political unrest greatly weakened the nation, allowing for many of these newly conquered lands to break away. It was now time for the Myanmarese to antagonize the Thai once again. The Konbaung dynasty demanded the return of the coastline on the Andaman Gulf. The Ayutthaya obviously refused, which prompted the Konbaung to invade. The Myanmarese were able to conquer the territory, and continued their attack back up the Gulf of Thailand coast. The southern parts of Ayutthaya were less fortified than the western and northern parts, as those were the usual directions the Myanmarese attacked from. The Thai were pushed back to their capital, but not without inflicting serious Konbaung casualties. Once the army arrived at Ayutthaya, there was little time before the monsoon season, and dysentery was rampant among the dynasty's troops. The illness passed on to the king, who died from it, which is where the war ended, with only part of the coast the dynasty originally planned on being reclaimed. During the following time of peace, the Ayutthaya were constantly supporting rebel groups in Konbaung, and undermining them at any chance. These efforts to sabotage the dynasty were unsuccessful, as the Ayutthayans were attacked on two fronts, one northern and another southern. This attack was almost unstoppable, and the enemy armies made it to the capital for a siege. This siege lasted through the rainy season, and eventually the attackers were able to breach the walls and raise the city. This was the first time a foreigner was able to do this in Ayutthayan history, and it left the city in ruins, with thousands taken prisoner or homeless. Not half a year later, a new leader emerged, fighting for Thai independence, led by a man by the name of Taskin. He was a part of the defenders of Ayutthaya, but fled with around 500 followers, seeing the inevitability of Ayutthayan defeat. He established himself at the town of Chanthaburi and raised an army there. Luckily for Taskin, the Konbaung left a very small force to garrison Thailand, leaving it ripe for the reuniting. This also meant that many other people were attempting the same thing, making the unification of Thailand less of a united expulsion of the Myanmarese, and more Thai states competing. Taskin established his capital at Thonburi, and was very efficient with his conquest. He was even able to subdue the Cambodians and Laotians. And once the Myanmarese were able to regroup, they attacked from the north, hoping to reclaim the land. The attack was unsuccessful, but showed the importance of Lan Na for the Myanmarese, if they ever wanted to invade again. So, Taskin planned an invasion to secure the safety of his people. So, to initially weaken the occupying force, Thonburi promoted a Lan Na rebellion, and swept in to clean up the remaining Myanmarese forces. This led to the annexation of the region. However, Taskin began to go slightly mad, which wasn't received well by the populace, and he was overthrown and executed. Rama I took the throne, beginning the Shakri dynasty. Rama built a new city across the river from Thonburi that was called Bangkok, although Bangkok would eventually come to encompass Thonburi as well. Rama's kingdom would be known as Ratanoskan, and as always, the Myanmarese kingdom to the east was eyeing up Ratanoskan. There were several armies coming from many fronts to attack weak points. A majority of the royal army went to fight the Myanmarese in Lan Na, leaving small forces in the rest of the nation. Many fronts were defended by a rally of the local people forming militias, and everywhere the enemy forces were stopped and forced to retreat. A second, more centralized attack by the Myanmarese was attempted, and again was repelled, ending the war. The influence of Europeans was now beginning to be felt heavily, with England conquering Malaysia to the south and Myanmar to the east. This forced the Thai into doing anything the Europeans asked, out of fear of being conquered themselves. Now, rebellions were started in Laos and Cambodia, heavily influenced by Vietnam. So, in suppressing these rebels, the Thai entered conflicts with the Vietnamese, these conflicts leading to a joint control over Cambodia as both a Vietnamese and a Thai vassal. To the west, France entered the playing field as another threat to Thai independence. So, when they claimed Cambodia as a French protectorate, the Thai relinquished any control they had over the kingdom. This was followed by a direct demand from the French to hand over Laos. Hoping to play their position between two major powers, the Thai refused, hoping the rivalry with France would bring Britain in to save the day. This was a miscalculation, as Britain did not get involved. At all. Leading to an invasion of the demanded territories and a bombardment of a coastal fort by French ships. The Thai eventually seceded the lands claimed by France. It was felt that the only way to avoid the Europeans completely conquering Thailand was to modernize. This meant transitioning to a very Western style of rule, moving away from the mandala system and to a centralized monarchy. Also, many technological advancements. But this did very little to help the gradual encroachment from all sides, as little by little small chunks of Thailand were taken and added to the lands of the European empires. Unknown to the Thai, France and England agreed that Thailand would be a buffer state between their two empires, to avoid conflicts and animosity. Rama VI now came to the throne. He was educated by English schools and sent the country through another period of modernization, while strengthening the monarchy. A growing disparity between the nobility and the common people began a revolt to implement a constitutional monarchy. The revolt wasn't successful, but it instilled a questioning of authority in the nation. Now, the perfect opportunity to show the world that Thailand was a modern Western nation and to improve the relations with the West came, as the First World War erupted. The Thai sent an expeditionary force into France to fight. To prove that the Thai were among equals, they designed a Western-style flag to be flown alongside Thai troops. Although joining late into the war, the Thai contingent of soldiers aided in the occupation of the Rhineland, were part of the League of Nations, and received a few German ships as reward. Now, state expenses began piling up, nearly bankrupting the nation during the Great Depression, forcing the king to decrease military spending, obviously angering the military in the process. This culminated in a military coup supported by many civilians, seeing Thailand as very mismanaged. This coup was without death, and it had installed a constitutional monarchy. Royalists rose up in a counter-coup that was unsuccessful, but it did directly cause a purge in the nation of political dissenters. It's no surprise that this semblance of democracy became a dictatorship, heavily supportive of fascist leaders and ideals. Once France fell to Germany during World War II, the Thai seized the opportunity of the cut-off French Indochina to regain former possessions. The Thai even had a larger, better-equipped army than the one stationed in the colony. The victory was swift, and the Thai gained land in both Laos and Cambodia. This war was technically not a part of World War II, and so the Thai declared neutrality afterwards in the larger war. Thailand was strong-armed into joining the war by Japan, who needed a route into the British Raj and British Malaya. Although originally only being a base of operations for the Japanese, the Allies were bombing Thailand, which made the nation militarily join the war. The Thai sent troops to fight in Myanmar, Malaysia, and southern China, fighting alongside Japan, and being given several provinces in Myanmar and Malaysia for their contributions to the war effort. However, as the war began to turn in favor of the Allies, the Thai became more and more wary of their position and Japan, even returning some Chinese prisoners of war to become more favorable in the eyes of the Allies. This was followed by a change in ruler to Quang Afai Wang, who played along with the charade of being friends with the Japanese, while coordinating a plan to remove them by force. The Japanese surrendered before the plan could take effect, but did not go unseen by the Allies. The Thai were forced to concede any territories taken and pay reparations to Britain. There was a short period of democracy, but very soon the military imposed a ruler who began purges of political dissenters, especially communists, as Thailand sided with the United States in the Cold War. The Thai government proved their commitment to the UN when they sent troops and supplies for the Korean War, and were paid handsomely for their commitment. Now, the US began stationing troops in Thailand as they increased their involvement in the Vietnam War. The Thai, who were very closely tied to the US, committed tens of thousands of troops to the war. Also with the US troops came a wave of westernization that saw a spike in quality of life and drastically changed Thai culture forever. The westernization also introduced mass media, facilitating the spread of information, which caused primarily students to aspire to live in a democratic nation. Demonstrations calling for liberalization became increasingly frequent and grew in size. These demonstrations began a new wave of increased support of the underground Communist Party of Thailand that began uprising throughout the north of the nation. There was an attempt at democracy, as the king forced military officials to step down, and elections were held. But this democracy was very unstable. This was followed by Cambodia and Laos becoming communist, and refugees flowing into the nation. With the threat of communism imminent, many people became reactionaries and demonized the student demonstrations as communist propaganda. This saw a return to power of the military, heavily supported by these ultra-conservative views. Many were killed by their brethren for being supposed communists during this time. This animosity reached a peak during a massive demonstration where the military fired upon a crowd with tanks and helicopters. This was immediately followed by a coup to reinstate a military dictatorship. Now, a period of flip-flopping between democracy and military juntas was seen, with near constant protests. During this time, an insurgency for an independent Muslim nation became violent in southern Thailand, which was met with violence in turn. Also, a border dispute between Cambodia and Thailand led to clashes between the nations over several years, that only ended when the International Court of Justice ruled in favor of the Cambodians. Currently, the government is a military junta disguised as a democracy, a disguise a majority of Thai are privy to. Recently, the opposition party in Thailand was legally disbanded on the basis that the party received an illegal loan. This disbanding caused a new wave of protest throughout the nation. Talks also began with the Muslim insurgency to find a common peace within Thailand. And that is the state of the nation of Thailand.